during some of Kenya's darkest hours.
Wakanifunga mdomo na kuniambia utanyamaza. Hivyo tu na kunisukuma mpaka chini, mwingine akanikanyaka kwa kifua hivi.
Sijui ni vijana wangapi waninifanyia mbaya.
I was in a pool of blood.
Sasa miezi kadhaa ilipita na nikajua ni kama niko na mimba.
Nataka tu itoke, isionekane kwamba nina mimba ya mtu mwingine nje.
I'm not having the child of a thug. No, I'm not. That was all that was going through my mind.
Sidhani kama kuna siku nitakuja kupenda huyu mtoto. Kwa sababu gani? Nikipenda huyu mtoto inamaanisha nilipenda hiyo kubakwa yenye nilibakwa hiyo. Kwa sababu baba alikuwa anataka kunichinja.
Well, let's get to the conversation now, and joining me in studio to discuss that are Soayo Tabitha Griffith, the Deputy Executive Director, Kenya Legal and Ethical Issues Network, and Rebecca Getau. Ladies, many thanks for making time for us. Before we get to what we have in store, I want you to react to the clip that just ran. Children who are 10 now and were conceived out of rape during the post-election violence in 2007, 2008.
Thank you for having us, and it's unfortunate that this is the truth and these are the realities that we have. Heartbreaking, unfortunate, things that should never, ever be discussed, and things that should perhaps, in my view, never have happened, but they did happen, and that's why we're here. So we'll get to hear more and we'll get to discuss more, but truly heartbreaking. Okay,
Rebecca Getau is a psychologist. I love you equally to react to the clip that we just watched.
Like my colleague says, it's very heartbreaking. And this being a national thing, you can imagine these children growing in a stigma that they were born out of rape. And always being reminded. The mother are already going through the stigma, the children are going through the stigma, and if nothing is done, the whole generation may go through that stigma. It's so sad, and something needs to be done to help the children, to help the survivors, and even to prevent that it doesn't happen again.
According to Kenya Domestic Household Survey, 38% of women aged between 15 to 49 report physical violence. 14% have reported having experienced sexual violence. When you hear such statistics, I guess and bet they must be scary.
They are scary, and the truth of the matter is that these statistics are not even a true reflection of what is on the ground.
Could the condition be worse than this?
It is worse because KDHS studies are usually done after every 4 to 5 years. What would have been more relevant would be perhaps to look at what we call the annual police crime statistics, which are also, again, not a reflection of the truth, because a lot of people who are sexually violated never report even to the police.
I equally have the economic survey of 2018, which is a police report, which says, among other things, and I quote, dangerous drug cases and sex offenders, including rape, defilement, incest, bestiality, sodomy, and abduction, contributed to 7% of the entire crimes committed in Kenya.
Yes, that one is true. And again, like she's saying, again, it's not real reflection. I work in an organization. I work in Nairobi Women's, where we deal with victims of rape and all that. And you can imagine, like last year, we had more than 4,000 survivors. Out of that, 80% were survivors of sexual violence. And you can imagine those are the only ones that reported at Nairobi Women's. More than, let's say, 3,800 going through sexual violence, reported only at Nairobi Women's Hospital. You can imagine in all other hospitals in Kenya.
And why is there a disconnect then between the data that is often posted and the actual scenarios that you are reflecting on?
Look, my profession is as a lawyer, so perhaps Rebecca can be able to give you, but my experiences from working in a variety of NGOs has been, number one, we have stigmatized sexual violence to an extent that it is not something that a woman is proud to ever report. Number two, for a very long time, police stations did not have a conducive environment within which women could actually feel safe to report. Number 3, there are instances whereby the perpetrators of sexual violence are family relatives, and therefore these are children who are threatened by their fathers, stepfathers, uncles, and therefore they're not capable of actually reporting it. So I would say those are my 3 big reasons as to why.
Fair enough. Rebecca, as a psychologist, why is there a silence of victims opting to rather struggle alone than to share information?
One, if you listen to this script that have just been played of, you'll hear the survivor blaming herself. So whenever this act happens, the psychology of a survivor, I am the one on the mistake. The whole community, the society, will always blame the survivor. And so, because I'll be blamed, I don't want to talk about it. And so many survivors, because of that blame, feeling guilty, they give the perpetrators a power to be on top. And they have to keep quiet because they don't want to be judged. I don't want anyone to see like I'm a sinner. Yet they are going through a lot of, they're going through a lot of difficulties and problems within themselves. And they can't talk about it. Like she said, even at a national level, this is not a topic we want to discuss. And we keep on stigmatizing those who have gone through sexual violence. It is bad to them, and we continue even making them look bad.
Some of the quotes from some of the survivors who Human Rights Watch documented said they face stigma in their own communities. It is difficult for them to speak even with their families, that they are shunned by their loved ones.
Remember, like, for example, sex education. In African setup, no one wants to discuss it. No one wants to talk about it. So it also becomes very difficult to talk about sexual violence. And so every community, actually, if you look at every community, they have a name. They name when a sexual violence comes, and it's not a good name. So from the community level, no one wants to talk about sexual violence. And so all the survivors are dying from inside because we can't discuss it from a community. We can't discuss it at a family level. It's a shame to our family. So we better keep it quiet. And if we have to discuss it, we have to discuss it when we are negotiating what will be paid.
Fair enough. And in the spirit of keeping quiet and negotiating, it seems as though the offenders are walking free.
True. They are. They are.
Which begs the question, is there legal empowerment to make sure then that the offenders are brought to book?
I would say yes and no. Yes, to the extent that the government and parliament has put in place a lot of legal frameworks that are in place to ensure that there's criminalization and penalties. But on the ground, we have so many barriers such that even though we have a law that protects survivors of sexual violence, implementation of these laws is extremely difficult.
You say there are barriers. What are some of the barriers?
Access to justice, number 1, starts with someone reporting. So we must put in place a conducive environment at the police station for the survivor to report. That is considerably missing in Kenya. The second barrier would be that the police have to do accurate investigations and thereafter pass on the files to the DPP and for prosecution to happen. We've seen instances where police have lacked either equipment, forensics, gloves, basics to be able to carry out a proper investigation. We've also seen instances whereby, due to the delay in justice, because we don't fast track in Kenya, cases of sexual violence, they will go through the whole entire justice system just like any other case.
And how long do such cases often take, from your experience?
From my experiences in court, on average, it would take 4 years, on average.
To solve
it would
one
take
case?
4 years for a case to go through reporting, the DPP taking over the file, the matter going to court, the survivor giving testimony, other witnesses coming on record, and then the matter being adjudicated. On average, for a good case, it would take 4 years. During this time, we have seen witnesses who've dropped out. We have seen children who have been taken to the village. We have seen parents negotiate out of court and then come back and say, we want to withdraw the matter. So these are the difficulties that are there.
Rebecca, as a psychologist, if you were to wait for 4 years to get justice, to get a case done, I wonder, how much of a big deal is that equally to the individual? If you were to think through 4 years to see whether you will even get justice at the end of the day. That must be daunting and daunting, is it?
Actually, like 80% of the survivors, they drop out. Because one, there is re-traumatization. Because the more I'm told to go and testify, and when I go to testify, the magistrate is, the case have been pushed, it is also reminding me what happened. So I better either solve it outside there or just drop it. So majority of survivors, they actually opt to drop it. Others become re-traumatized to an extent they are not able to testify. And more worse is to children. The children here is someone who is very close to you. And I'm supposed to testify 3 or 4 times. And probably this is my father. And I'm exposed to my father, and I am told I have to testify against my dad. The trauma again comes back. Most children even forget what happened. Most children even opt to not talk. So that access to justice is one thing that we have seen survivors getting re-traumatization, and instead of that, they opt just to live in harmony and just forget about it. And like she said, we empower now the perpetrators.
What kind of a danger then does that pose if at all offenders 4 years later, the cases are dealt with out of court, there's a negotiation that has gone on, and they have agreed at a certain fee? That doesn't clearly deter someone from committing such crime.
Precisely. It creates an environment of impunity. And that is why I will, excuse my French, see someone tapping a girl's body parts in a matatu because he knows nothing will happen to him. You will see a perpetrator continuously violate the same child. We've had instances whereby perpetrators have been set free on bail and have gone back and re-traumatized the survivor either by raping the girl again or doing something to the family. So what it has done is create an environment of impunity where people know that nothing will happen and I can bribe my way around. I can buy off this family. I can actually have my way with a child and nothing much will happen to me.
And how then do you deal with such fallouts? When you know there is a law but someone can have their way. But how do you deal as someone probably who has been offended, someone who is seeking justice, but the system is taking too long to the offender to be brought to book, and things are slowing down? What other options and alternatives does someone of that sort have?
I'll tell you from my experiences that people get desperate. When, and because of the fact that as an organization we work with, most of our survivors are from the peri-urban settlements and the slums, and because of the fact that there's so much that's happening, they drop half of the cases. Now what we've been advocating for is what we'd call a holistic intervention that does not just cater for maybe one arm, which is justice, but a holistic 360 approach. What we ask for is this. Can, number one, the state have safe houses whereby we extract these children from homesteads where they're being violated? We don't have safe shelters in Kenya. Number two, during the entire time when the case is happening, can the state guarantee survivors psychosocial support? Meaning that this child is going through counseling, continuous counseling, during the entire time when the case is in court. Number three, can we have creativity in the judiciary, as we've seen with judges? There are certain judges that we've worked with. Shout out to Justice Majanja, who created a system when he was, I think, in Homa Bay and Kisumu, whereby all the cases which involved children who were survivors were heard during school holidays. That means that the child is accessible. We're not continuously removing the child from school, and we're making sure that the case is going on. So creativity.
Fair enough. Rebecca, for a child probably, just to quote the title of the feature that ran, which is I Am 10, for a child who is 10, 12, or even 15 years, who was born out of an offense as such, who is wondering what is the wrong thing that I did. First of all, have they done anything wrong?
No, they have not done anything wrong. The child has not done anything wrong. Neither the mother have done anything wrong. None has done anything wrong. But like I said from the beginning, because of the societal perception, the mother has been you know, the mother have been made to believe I did something wrong. Yet, the thing that was done to her, the person who did it is the one who is on the wrong. And now she's passing this to the child. And if you listen to it, they're saying, I do not even know how this child will grow. So there's a lot that needs to be done to these survivors, a lot of counseling the mother who is the caregiver, a lot of counseling to the child to change the perception.
And what does that counseling include? On just the basics and the primary of what you do, what does that counseling include?
First is, we start with the psychoeducation, creating awareness to the survivor that it is not your mistake. That even if, and I tell people, even if you walked naked, no one is supposed even to touch you. So we start from there, believing that it is not your mistake. Then the second thing, it happened. We have to agree that it happened. And here we have this, there's a gift of this child that came out of the offense. Then we need to change the perception and the thinking of this child that I am just like any other child, unique, wonderful. And I've been born through the normal way. Only that during conception, it was out of violence perpetrated by someone who should be behind the bars.
Would that not be a difficult task to do, understanding that the child lives in a society that may at times be reminding him of how he came to the world?
It is. I want to believe with you, it's a difficult task to do, but it's doable. Because like where the organization I work for, we deal with a lot of children who have gone through sexual abuse and they have developed trauma. And so we work with them for close to 1 year for them to come back and believe, even if I go out, because sometimes it's hard to change the society, such that even if the society reminds me, I'll still remind myself that I didn't call for this. I am okay. I did not call for this. And it's a tough journey, but I made it. I am a survivor now.
And is it possible to completely heal from such an incident?
It's possible to completely heal. Yes, there can be relapse. They can be relapse, but it's possible to heal. All that is needed, we need a proper psychosocial support. And here, when we talk about proper psychosocial support, we don't only mean counseling. We mean counseling and other things. Because probably these mothers, they were relocated.
And before we take a break, what does the other things include? I understand counseling, yes?
Yes, economic empowerment, because probably the caregiver relocated. And economically, they are not doing well from where they were. So they need economic empowerment. They need education. They need to be educated about their rights. For example, like what Karen said about the law, in our small organization, in our small space, when we realized it's difficult for survivors to get justice, we came up with medical legal clinics where we call lawyers and we call survivors every 3 months to come and educate the survivors. This is your life. Please, even if it takes this long, bear with it, but you'll get justice.
Fair enough, Rebecca. Hold on that thought. I understand we need to take a short commercial break here on Weekend Express. When we come back from the break, we'll talk matters, the mistrust between individual survivors and the authorities. Don't go too far. We'll be back after this break.